I'm David Forsyth, and I'm the only modern person here. This is the story of an RMC hike that went awry. It's probably among the top 3 most memorable hikes that I've gone on. The day started with me as the leader of an RMC hike on a Tuesday about 25 years ago. The plan was that after the hike, Ann and I were going to go out to dinner at 6 o'clock with Betty and Charles Brunick. I must say that I was known for leading somewhat strenuous hikes, partly because I was still trying to finish the 4,000 footers. But this hike was just to Galehead Hut, about 4 miles one way and not too strenuous. I waited at the Appalachia trailhead for people to show up, but no one did. After the requisite 15 minutes, I decided, what the heck, I'll go anyway. I drove to the Gale River trailhead, and with no responsibilities to others, I got up to Galehead quite quickly. It was still only about 11 o'clock, so it was too early for lunch. And I thought I might as well go up South Twin also and get a good view on this glorious day. I got up there quickly also and was eating my lunch when along came 2 guys from Maine. They stopped to chat for a moment and said they were going on to Bond and Bondcliff. I had not yet done the bonds. So I asked if I could go along after checking the distance in the guidebook. Of course, it turned out that I was reading that description starting at the other end, and I missed the 1.5 miles or so that went from South Twin to the Zealand Trail on Guyot. We moved out at a fairly fast pace, but that didn't bother me because at that time I was at the peak of my hiking powers. We went over Guyot and on to Bond and Bondcliff, arriving about 2 p.m. I snacked a bit and took in the view, and it was only then that I realized I had to get back for a 6 o'clock dinner. Unfortunately, my companions were continuing on in the wrong direction. They were done with the peaks. They were going out the other way. So I turned around and started going back up Bond at a trot. I got to the top of Bond, snacked again, drank some water and moved on. I got to the side trail to West Bond and decided really there was no way I had time to do that 4,000 footer. However, in pausing there, I realized I didn't have my hat. Clearly, I'm a person who needs a hat. So I went back up Bond to get my hat, making this the 3rd time in the day that I had seen the top of that mountain. I started back again towards Galehead Hut and began to realize that I had to regain a lot of elevation, as South Twin is the highest peak on that ridge. I got to the Zealand Trail junction and by now had run out of water. So I decided to go down to a campsite, at least I thought there was a campsite, where, I just did something to this, where there would be water. Unfortunately, it was a very steep down, and the campsite never seemed to appear, and I knew I would have to regain all that elevation. So I turned around once again, went back up the trail, and continued on. I was still trying to move fast because of the dinner engagement that night. Partway up South Twin, I came upon a man lying in the trail. He claimed he was just resting. It would be all right. So I continued up. But then shortly after, I really hit the wall also. I was exhausted, but I struggled and made it up and then down to Galehead Hut by about 5 o'clock. Of course, there were still 4 miles to go, and I was totally exhausted. By this time, I must have looked so miserable that the hut people said I could stay and even use a bunk if not too many hikers showed up, too many through hikers. I eventually convinced them to radio AMC headquarters to avoid a search. There were no cell phones at that time, and they didn't like to do these trivial calls. But they were convinced to do so, and they got word out to a restaurant where Anne was dining with Betty and Charles with a terse message that I was okay. You have to ask Anne for the rest of the story on that side. At any rate, it was a memorable RMC hike for one person, with 3 new peaks, because I did get up to Galehead Mountain the next morning, and a reputation started for being late for dinner due to hikes.